afternoon, everybody. Full house. Don't worry, we'll get rid of a lot of them very soon. They'll all go back out to go back into the roads and plow our streets. I just would like to thank everyone for coming today, and this is the Township Mapleton Council meeting for January 28th, 2025. Call this meeting to order, and if you can, please rise. We'll have O Canada. Bet you didn't know I could throw my voice like that, huh? All right, we have a lot to get through today, but the first thing we're going to be doing is giving out some milestone awards here. We have amazing staff here in Mapleton, and we're proud of them. And we do have some milestones that we'd like to give a certificate out today from council to those individuals. And we have 5 of them. And we're going to take some photos, so it's going to take a little bit of time, but please bear with us because this is very important to us, especially when it gets to the last one. And that's quite amazing. So, but the first 2 are both 5-year awards, and the first one we're going to give to Amy Gross for 5 years. As we take photographs. But Amy, 5 years, congratulations on 5 wonderful years, and you've done some amazing work when it comes to our children and our community with everything you've been doing, and we're just so proud of you, so thank you. All right, thank you very much. Next one we have is Clint Gerson. Clint, you want to come up here? Clint is also a recipient of a 5-year award. Thank you, Clint. Thank you very much. Thank you. And stick around because we'll have a group picture afterwards. Next up, here's we're getting to the big numbers here. Steve Elliott, 20 years. Steve. Thank you for your service for 20 years. It's gone. There's 20 years went like that. See, really quick. And next one up, we have Barry Heimers. Barry's at the 25-year level. Barry. Okay, thanks, Barry. Yeah. Well, there you go. Everyone wants to get rid of the certificate that quickly. And the last one we have Jimmy Driscoll. Jimmy, 40 years. me, I can tell you, I wasn't that old when you started.
Oh, there you go.
In fact, I think some people in this room weren't even born yet, Jim. Here, take this one.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to have everybody up, and we're going to have a group photo. Everybody, the whole room, everybody in the room, come up here. We're going to do a group photo. This is the request of the boss over here. So, yeah. Some are going in the front. Amy, if you can come in the front. Yes, Amy. Thank you. Some shorter people in the front. Yeah. There. Yeah. Well, that's it. Pull it up here.
Yep, settle in.
Oh, now we can't get everybody in here. Yep. Jim, you're short. Get in the front, Jim.
Yeah. There you go. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
All right. Congratulations, everybody. And I wasn't lying when I said some of them are going right back outside to get on our roads and start cleaning things up, and we're really proud of them. The last 4 are all equipment operators, which is fantastic. Any declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes. Moved by Councillor Woodham, second by Councillor Autumns, that the minutes of the Township Mapleton Council meeting held on January 14, 2025 be confirmed as circulated in the agenda. Any comments, questions? All in favor? It's carried. Next thing up, we have a Planning Act matter. So we'll go into a public meeting under the Planning Act. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act to hear comments from the public and agencies and give consideration to application ZBA 2024-18 for a proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Subject lands are located at Part Lot 3, Concession A, RP 60R1355, known as 7090 Jones Baseline Road. Purpose and effect is to rezone the lands to permit a wellness retreat business as an agritourism establishment. This will include a healing arts barn offering naturopathic medicine, hydrotherapy, Pilates, yoga, sound healing, tea ceremonies, workshops, and relaxation. The proposal all includes the establishment of 5 tiny homes for overnight accommodation. The property is currently a hobby farm and would retain this use as part of the proposal. Mr. Clerk, statutory requirements, please.
Thank you, sir. Staff can confirm that property owners, Mapleton staff, and agencies were provided with the required notice. Proper on-site postings were completed. Comments are in your agenda package from Source Water Protection, GRCA, and the County of Wellington. We had in the agenda package comments from the neighbors, the Facklams, and the Waltons. We had 2 pages of inquiries from Councillor Woodham that I've distributed, and they were answered by our professional planner. And there was a 5-page proposal submitted by the proponent, and we've distributed that to all the council members today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. And we'll now hear from our planner, Linda Redmond.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. So this application, the Mayor has already described the purpose of it. Just to go over the land, it is designated prime ag and does have some natural features on it that are regulated by the GRCA. In the prime ag area, agritourism is something that is considered under the permitted uses in agriculture areas. This is being presented to the township as an agritourism business to have this retreat center and also short-term accommodations as part of that proposal, and there is a hobby farm on this property, so that will be part of this venture. At this point in time, there's no recommendation. I've just outlined the designation and what policies would be applicable in this situation. The GRSA has already indicated they have no concerns that all the proposed uses are being located outside of their regulated area on the land, so they're fine with it. And that's all I have at this point. I think the applicant has more information to provide council and answer any questions.
And the applicant is Shelley Frank. Shelley, do you have any comments you'd like to make? Please go up to the microphone there and just press the button and go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shelley Frank, and I just wanted to begin by thanking Linda and Maggie and Michelle for helping me with my proposal, and everybody here at council who's taken time out of your busy schedule to hear it, and also to my neighbors. I wanted to extend deep gratitude for being here and your letters. I've read them and I've taken them to heart, and I hope to answer your questions here today. So, who am I? I'm Shelley Frank. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I've been studying and practicing naturopathic medicine for many, many years, since 2001. I'm also a very proud and grateful farm owner in our wonderful municipality. My husband and I have a beautiful little hobby farm with horses and sheep, and it's a very tranquil, peaceful place. So, agritourism is playing an increasingly vital role in the health and well-being of Canadians. I want to create an upscale wellness retreat where guests can spend time in nature, engaging in traditional healing practices in a peaceful rural environment. And what I want to really stress here is that we live on the property, so, having a very peaceful, very safe, very quiet wellness retreat is not only a priority for our neighbors, but also for ourselves. Jones Baseline is a very special little street where our road isn't paved and it's very, very quiet. Our neighbors are fantastic people, and I think we've all chosen to live there because we like watching the stars and we like seeing the birds, and we just really enjoy the peace and quiet. We don't interact very often with our neighbors, but when we do, it's always been incredibly pleasant and very respectful. And we tend to have this unspoken silence that we enjoy, our privacy and our tranquility. So the other thing about this particular property that we are blessed to live on is it's surrounded by a forest. So spring, summer, and fall, you cannot see our property. We can't see our neighbors, and they can't see us. In the winter, it is a bit startling when it's like, oh, there's people that live around here besides us. So that's a really nice thing for our retreat. What will it look like? So we currently have one little luxury tiny home at the back of our farm, and so we're proposing to build 4 more. So there would be a maximum occupancy of 10 adult guests on this retreat at any given time. I have included a picture of the tiny home that's currently there. In addition, we are hoping to build a beautiful healing arts barn. This would serve as a hub for hydrotherapy, sound healing, naturopathic medicine, therapeutic massage, Pilates, yoga, workshops, and relaxation. And of course, these activities would only occur during regular business hours. I wish I took public speaking now. The placement of these structures has been really carefully planned to ensure they are situated well away from our neighbors' homes, as well as away from our home, to maintain a quiet, peaceful experience not only for guests but also for our neighbors. It's my idea that people, when they do come to the country, want to experience the beauty of being in the country, which is privacy and solitude and just quiet time. Our property lines will be well marked to ensure that guests do not embark on adjacent properties, either by accident or purposefully. A gate at the entrance with a code will be placed to ensure safety and accountability of guests coming and going. And guest parking will be located by our existing barn, keeping a small number of cars away from neighbors. Access will be through our existing driveway, which is far away from all of our neighbors. I have submitted this proposal to the GCRA, and they have given their preliminary approval as the structures do not impact wetlands or protected areas, which is extremely important to me as a naturopathic doctor to maintain the health of the community, the ecosystem, everyone in the resort, and ourselves included. So on the last page is just a map of a picture showing of our existing tiny home to give council and neighbors an idea of what these structures will look like, a concept photo of the Healing Arts Barn, as well as placement. And as you can see, our property there is outlined in red. My two wonderful neighbors who are closest to the property, who have legitimate concerns, I just wanted to reassure that the Healing Arts Barn is 2 acres away from our closest neighbor and 3 acres away from our furthest neighbor. So there is a lot of space between the closest structure and our neighbors. And also, if you can see the big sort of white building, that's where our current barn is. So the parking would be around that structure, which is far away from, acres and acres away from either of our neighbors, just to ensure that they're not seeing traffic coming and going or lights or any of that sort of business. So that's basically my proposal, and I'm really happy to have shared it with everyone in this room, and I'm also looking forward to any questions or helping with any concerns that anyone may have.
Well, thank you very much, Shelley, and we'll get back to you in just a minute. Are there any comments from those in attendance? Please indicate so and state your name and address for the record. We'll first hear from those in support of the zoning amendment. Anyone here wishing to speak in support of the zoning amendment? Seeing none, we'll now hear from those opposed to the zoning amendment. Please step up to the microphone if you're opposed and state your name and your address for the record.
Yeah, my name's Jim Snow. My farm backs onto your property, and I'm quite far, my house is a long ways away, but I guess I'm a little bit concerned. People wandering on the property, I don't know I don't know how you keep people from wandering. If they come out to this, from the city out, they just wander. And also, the one home is noted on these instructions, but there's 4 other homes, and I don't know where they are. I guess if I could get some assurance that you could keep your people off my property, I wouldn't oppose it, but I'm sort of sitting on the fence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address.
Okay, this is still on, I guess. Chris Walton, 7102 Jones Baseline. I mean, this package is nice. It would have been nice to see that before I came today, too. But I think our only concerns were mostly addressed, but just with the volume It is, this time of year, it's very clear, you can see their property, but it is, when the trees are full, we can't see them at all, and it is nice. But our concern is not so much the business at all, more so just the tiny homes and the overnight accommodations. Just if it's going to be, if the volume is going to be regulated. I mean, if, with this many tiny homes, with the potential for 10 people staying over, I just wonder if it's going to end up being a spot for, say, bridal parties or things like that. I just kind of want to know what it's going to be, if there's going to be evenings where the volume gets a little bit out of control. And that's where I mainly stand. Like I say, I'm all for the business. I'm not against that in any way. Just want assurance to keep people off the property and behind us and things like that. And that's it. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? The applicant, you can, oh, sorry, do you? Okay, sorry. Applicant, you can respond to these concerns.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Chris, for coming and for your concerns. And I really do appreciate them, and I resonate with that. I wouldn't want people to come on our property either. I think that's something that most people who live in the country feel pretty strongly about, and I very much agree with that. So in response to that, I can absolutely give 100% clarity that there will not be weddings or big venues happening on this property. That is something that I have zero interest in doing. Horses are like very sensitive to noise, and so are we, our family, and we're also very sensitive to our neighbors, and you know, operating activities that include alcohol or late at night or huge groups of people, that is not what this is going to be at all. I do hope to have 10 overnight guests, but they would be spread out, and it would be a healing, quiet opportunity for those guests. And I think it's really important that even though our area around our farm is wetlands and forest, so it is quite challenging to go through, and we do have a certain area where we've carved out a really nice walking path which would be accessible, but that is only on our property. There would be very strong and clear signs up so that people didn't make a mistake accidentally and go on my neighbor's property, because that would make me feel as upset as it would you, just as I wouldn't want your guests to come on my property. So I hope that that answers your concern a little bit there. And also, Jim, they're very, very hard to see, but there's 4 little green boxes. Those are where I've proposed the 4 additional tiny homes. And then the big green box is where the healing arts barn would be. So it is kind of a little cluster there. And, you know, I'm hoping to do that so that people kind of have a very clear parameter of that area. And then over sort of by where the current tiny home is, closer to our home, there is a very beautiful path that we've worked on clearing for the last almost decade that people will be able to use, but it's nowhere close to any of our neighbors. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer those questions.
All right, now we'll open it up to council members. Members of council, got any questions for either the planner or for the applicant? Councilor Reid.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. To, I believe, planning, how do we as council or we as a township make sure that these accommodations are being used for the retreat center and not as a typical ARU in the future?
Through you, Mayor, for clarification, when you say a typical ARU, are you talking about like renting it out as in a long-term situation? Well, I guess we could, if that's something council wants to do, we could always, I guess, write it into the bylaw in some way, that it's only, they're only to be occupied in a short-term lease scenario. How, you know, that's not easy to enforce, but certainly that, at least it makes it clear in the zoning bylaw what it could be used for and what it cannot be used for.
Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Is it coming through? All right.
You're on.
I guess through you to the Franks, some of the questions, I guess, that have kind of come up and will be part of my questions are, you know, you probably don't pay attention to council meetings unless you have an application here, but we see a bunch of these that come through. And part of our due diligence, I guess, is that there can be lots of things stated during an application process, and as soon as it leaves here, we really have a lot of difficulty enforcing kind of what happens, right? So in the case, that's not what I'm suggesting with this application, just the questions are good, right? So part of my questions and then concerns, I guess, would kind of be around the threshold of whether it meets agritourism or not. Sounds like you've got a beautiful spot that a lot of people would be jealous of, and that's, I assume, why it's a good spot for a wellness retreat, right? I happen to think that sometimes we could do better protecting prime ag lands. But that being said, there's always allowances, I guess, for what type of activities can happen within that type of setup. So, you know, we've had discussions here before about, you know, do we regulate short-term accommodations through Airbnb, like that type of thing. Planner Brown has kind of suggested that, you know, that could be an option moving forward. We've resisted it to date because I personally don't think there's really a need, but it really only takes one little trouble spot, and then suddenly we'll, you know, start looking at all this kind of licensing body that kind of surrounds it. So I guess the question in all this is, you know, the tiny home that you currently have, what's currently happening with it? Do you have someone renting it? Do you guys use it yourselves? And then, and again, I guess we can't really, we hope that your business takes off and does super, super well, and there's no questions around this, but, you know, a place like this with a few tiny homes could very quickly turn into like an Airbnb type of spot, which then turns into, I would assume, neighborhood concerns around traffic and noise and, you know, all of those types of things. So, yeah, so those are my two questions. I guess, what's the current tiny home being used for? And, you know, your plans around Airbnb or turning it into kind of a short stay accommodation type of business.
Thank you for those questions, too. So currently, our existing tiny home is just being used as a guest, for guests. Our current home is quite modest in size, so if people come to stay with us, they'll stay in the tiny home, which is nice. In regards to, again, the noise concerns, I think all I can say is that having noisy or disruptive people on our property would cause us as much issue as anyone else in our community, and that's not something that we would want to withstand or have to deal with. Our 23 acres is pretty special to us, and for that reason, we want to maintain its tranquility and peaceful vibe, not just for our neighbors, but also for ourselves and our family and for our animals. So, you know, all I can say is that I have integrity with this proposal, and I stand behind the intention of this wellness retreat to be a healing experience for everyone involved in the matter. So, I hope that answers your question.
Please stay there, there's probably more questions. Councillor Woodham.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Davidson. I do have a question also, it'll be to you. So if I'm hearing correctly, you have stated it's not going to be like a bridal party or a wedding can get ready there type of thing. With the Healing Barn and the holistic approach to that, is that really your whole goal then with having these extra tiny homes, is so that the visitors can stay and participate? Like it would be a package. They're not just coming to stay in a tiny home, I guess is my question.
You got to hit the button again, sorry.
It would be a package for people to either participate as a group, so as a group of 10, or as individuals, to be able to participate and stay over and experience agritourism, which is, enjoying the life on a farm and some healing modalities that would go with that, with the tiny homes.
Thank you. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Davidson. It sounds, if ever there is a location to have a wellness retreat, it's a beautiful country property that's forested and has animals and trails. I mean, I understand the target here. It sounds lovely. Would this be seasonal, like summer only, or would you be doing this year-round? Would it just be kind of a weekend thing? Would you be doing it all summer? I'm just wondering how frequently you would have guests. A lot of my other questions have been addressed. I was wondering, as Councillor Woodham had said too, if people would come and they just wanted to rent the home to hang out, or would it, the tiny home, or would it be required that they participate in one of your events as well?
That's a very good question. I would hope that people would want to participate in the wellness retreat opportunities as well. I think it would be a big miss if they just came and stayed in a tiny home and just enjoyed the property. But I'm not saying that I'm not completely, I'm not going to force people to go to yoga and have tea and do some hydrotherapy. So I think the people who would be attracted to staying in this wellness retreat would want sort of an all-inclusive experience. In terms of being operational full-time, having practiced naturopathic medicine for a very long time, I realized that, there is such a thing as just getting a little bit of fatigue of supporting other people, providing services like this. So I'm sure my family would probably like a break from having people on the property from, a few months for sure out of every year. And also just for us to kind of, exhale and enjoy the property for ourselves, and to do any maintenance or, take vacation, that sort of thing. But with that being said, it probably would be running, 9 to 10 months out of the year.
Shelley, you said you've been operating a business for many years. Where are you operating right now? On the property?
So right now, I'm on a sabbatical. I've been on a sabbatical for the last 2 years. I've been very fortunate to just be working on this business, doing a lot of continuing education around the world. But previous to that, I had a very successful practice in Cambridge, and I also did have quite a nice practice in our farm before COVID-19.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Linda Redmond. Just a quick question. Permitted use in prime ag areas are typically accessory to the farming operation. And I know that gets a little gray at times, with a lot of kind of the on-farm businesses that we have here in Mapleton. I can't imagine, no offense, that a 23-acre farm is generating a ton of revenue, and I mean that respectfully, but hobby farms traditionally don't. So with a business like this on a hobby farm, does it, if you challenge it against that language, does it meet that threshold?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Great question. So the permitted uses in agricultural areas, the Green Book, as we call it, outlines a number of uses that are permitted on farms or in rural, in prime areas. So there's your on-farm diversified uses, which are to be secondary to a farming operation. And in the book, it talks about what is a farming operation. So it doesn't discuss, monetary value, if how much you make as a farmer. It doesn't discuss the size of the farm. It doesn't discuss what you're farming, how you're farming, whether it's livestock, whether it's crops. It just talks about the fact that an on-farm diversified use must be on an active farm. So that can take, I've had many inquiries on properties that are this small, that have, very small farm operations. They might have some organic farming or what have you. So that can operate and be successful on a smaller parcel. So that isn't helpful in some ways, but it is helpful because you're not tied to certain sizes and uses and that kind of thing. Farming can take on, like trees is considered farming. There's all kinds of arguments to what is a farm and what is considered secondary versus primary. The other thing to remember, though, is that the permitted uses on agricultural lands also include secondary uses. So it's not just your typical, Mapleton on-farm diversified use where you have a 100-acre active farm with livestock and this business, which is what we see mostly here, and that's what we're used to. So this is a different situation. Mapleton Organics is a perfect example of a smaller parcel that has, agritourism as well as on-farm diversified uses. So there's a mix of stuff. The guidelines do talk about agritourism. They talk about, they use terms like farm vacation suites. That's right in the county official plan. There's no definitions for it. So that's the tricky thing. And there's, so I even looked up in the dictionary, what would this be defined as? And there's really nothing to go on. So we have to look at how much of a farm is this? Is there farm activity going on? Does it meet the intent of the policies? Is it out in the country? Is it in a farming area? Is it, would you, you have to look at it as a whole as opposed to just this property and what's happening on it. I don't know if that helps, but that's how.
Clear as
I'm looking at
mud,
it.
Linda, thank you. So we're in a gray area, gotcha. Kind of, okay. I do have a few questions for the applicant. So where you're going to be putting the tiny homes in the Healing Arts Barn, what is currently that piece of property being used for?
That particular part of the property is a huge piece of grass that takes me about 4 hours to mow.
Right, thank you. You have animals on the property right now. What do you have and how many?
So currently we have 2 horses and 3 sheep. They're all pets. Nobody generates any money. My neighbors call them hay burners. And we also have 2 Great Pyrenees, which are livestock dogs, and 2 cats. Oh, and we have a duck.
And a duck.
Sorry, Leonard.
No, we need to know where the duck was, that's good.
I forgot about my duck.
Sorry, so you must have, you've had your 2-year sabbatical, and you must have looked at this, maybe at other places, that's where you got the idea to do this. Building these tiny homes in the Healing Arts Barn is going to cost a little bit of money. Going to my business mind here, what's your plan for these these spaces if your business fails?
That's a very good question. I'm a very optimistic person, but I guess if my business failed, I would attempt to sell them. They are movable, so I would attempt to sell them and reclaim some of our equity and move them off the property.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of council then? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time.
This public meeting is now concluded. Mr. Clerk, we're finished. Thank you for all attending and your comments and your questions. Just have a resolution here moved by Councillor Ottens, second by Councillor Woodham, that Township of Mapleton Council receive for information Planning Report ZBA 2024-18, 7090 Jones Baseline Part Lot 3, Concession A, Part 1, RP 60R1355. Receiving it for information, council, all in favor? Sorry, got a question first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are the planning staff comfortable with the direction for a recommendation coming forward, or where should we go with that? Or is that after this
That's a great question.
receiving for information?
Receiving for information, do you need more information from the information? Need more direction?
I'm assuming that I'm coming back with a recommendation report and a draft bylaw for council's review.
Thank you. And is there anything that council would like to make sure is in that draft bylaw? As in noise issues, or Councilor Martin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure how it will get crafted, but I think there was, some legitimate concerns from the neighborhood that would be nice to incorporate into said bylaw. Whether it was noise, the property concerns, right, staying on the property, those types of things, that the applicant doesn't seem opposed to them, at least. So I don't know if we could incorporate some of those recommendations or some of those suggestions into a bylaw. Is that still too cloudy?
Nope, that's good. Anything others further from council? Councilor Woodham?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Davidson. But just a comment, comment question to the planner. If we do incorporate into the bylaw stipulations, this, and this, do we have the means or the policies to enforce it? So I'm not sure why we put things in if we can't follow up with it, I guess is my nice way of saying it.
And I think, Councilor Woodham, that we'll get the planner and the planning manager, they'll work together, they'll come up with a bylaw, we can look at it, and those questions would be answered at that time. Thank you. Anything further from council? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to delegations, we have Sustainable Waterloo Region. Tova? Thank you. Now, Tova, I think our former Councillor Martin and I attended an event that you had in Waterloo Region.
We
that
did
you were there.
indeed, yes. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Tova Davidson. I am the Executive Director at an organization called SWR, founded as Sustainable Waterloo Region. And I wanted to come and present to you today to just tell you a little bit about the organization, what we do, how we can support your community, and our history. So if you can go to the next slide, please. We were founded as Sustainable Waterloo Region, and people might have heard of us. We've worked actually with some of your staff in the past in other municipalities. We were founded 15 years ago as a student project, but just before the pandemic, we had a lot of requests from our neighboring communities for the kinds of help that we offer. And so we have expanded our boundaries, next slide please, to include Wellington County, Perth, and Oxford County, because there isn't somebody like us in your communities. We are a social enterprise, self-sustaining organization, nonprofit. We work at the area of organizational sustainability, individual businesses, for-profits, nonprofits, as well as the municipalities, universities, schools, hospitals, that sort of thing. We also work at community scale, so what would be the carbon footprint of an entire community, and what is the plan to reduce that? How do we move forward? What are the kinds of technical documents you need? How do we help you set targets, meet commitments, all of that sort of thing. And our work is primarily in energy and energy planning and reduction. We work in mobility, so getting goods and people around, and we work in green buildings. We also do some work in adaptation, reforestation, and I'm going to tell you about some of those today. Next slide, please. This is our impact from our previous year-end report, and you should all have a copy of it that you can take a look at. It's also online. Please send it to everybody that you think would be interested. We are a plucky little group of 8 staff. People look on our website and think we're enormous. It's mostly volunteers, but here's some of the numbers. So we've worked with 120 businesses last year. This is in 2023. The new report is being done, as you can imagine. Data is hot and fast coming in at us. We planted over 1,000 trees in 2023. We worked with 230 volunteers. When I said we are volunteer-run, it is entirely true. We have worked with more than 1,800 students in schools, and on. So I hope you can take a look through that year-end report. Next slide, please. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the kind of work we do with municipalities, because we actually support quite a number of municipalities, and we look both at their corporate impact and their community impact, and I'm going to go through each of them. Next slide. Our climate action work is actually work that we do with all 8 area municipalities collectively in Waterloo Region. So if you've heard of Climate Action Waterloo Region or Transform WR, that's work that we do in partnership with Reap Green Solutions, who is our counterpart in the residential sector. This is the place where we would actually do the measurement for what is the carbon footprint of the whole community. Every building, every home, every vehicle, every head of livestock, all of the waste management, all of it, and figure out what is the commitment that this community would like to make, and then how do we have the technical pathway and the community buy-in and the community movement to make it happen. And we are a classic social enterprise, but also that idea of an intermediary. So we work with everybody who's already doing stuff to help them and encourage them to do more. Next slide, please. The Transform WR strategy in Waterloo Region is the one that actually shows all of the actions. There's 87 actions listed in this report, some of them owned by the municipality, some of them owned by businesses, residents, et cetera. And we help to convene that report back on progress. Next slide. The Impact Network is the program that we were actually founded around, and it was a student project out of Wilfrid Laurier University. And it is where we work with individual organizations. So it could be corporate emissions if you're thinking as a municipality. Next slide. We work with organizations and help them go through a milestone process and provide them with the resources and expertise. So we've got people with Masters of Climate Change, we've got proper technical carbon accounting, waste accounting, water accounting tools that are all provided free of charge. We do events, which are capacity building and learning, peer groups, recognition, all kinds of resources online and best practices, and able to help someone, like some of your staff, to move faster, have the skills, talk to their peers, talk to people who this is what they do day in and day out, to be able to enable it and make it easier, make it faster, make it clearer, to get the data that you need to make decisions. Next slide, please. We set targets in carbon, which is mostly energy. When people talk about carbon footprint all the time, that comes mostly from your energy use. So carbon, waste, and water, and sometimes they all intermingle, and we're usually looking for where there is real material impact, both control and impact. And we would work with you to determine which ones are right for you, and this could be for any business in this community. Next slide. This is just one example of one organization that has all 3 targets, and we do this public reporting once they give us permission to, for how are they doing against their target, what is the progress that they've made, and where are they still going. We also tell the stories of it. They have pages on our website, etc. Next slide. So we are a plucky little nonprofit, as I said, but we actually have scaled across Canada. So there's an organization called Green Economy Canada, and it's a nonprofit that SWR created and launched to be independent of us to scale that program I just told you about, the Impact Network. We feed our learnings, our 15 years of learning, working with organizations, and there are organizations all over Canada who are now trying to create this exact same kind of program. Next slide. We also have a microforest program where we will take spaces that we think of as undevelopable land. Think, the back corner of a schoolyard, the center of a roundabout, some little spot that we're mowing now. Why are we still mowing this? And we plant native species trees. We do it in partnership with the Grand River Conservation Authority. We plant all kinds of different trees, including endangered species. Next slide. A microforest is about 100 trees in 500 square feet. It's a great way to renaturalize in a rural setting. It's a great way to stop erosion, wind erosion, the wind that blows across the highways. We all know the great people who are here getting recognition today are now taking care of some of that. These are the kinds of things that we look to do to build the green infrastructure. Next slide. There are eco-benefits as well, things like slowing down wind, slowing down rain, so we get less flooding as climate events happen. It can provide shade, it can reduce heat island effect for hardscape surfaces at corporate spaces. Next slide. And there are lots and lots of social benefits. So we plant a lot of these in schoolyards, especially schoolyards that are big open fields. Sometimes kids need a quiet spot to sit at the end of the day. We also find that curriculum is often integrated in, so the learning in science and environment, that sort of thing, often are integrated right into these microforests. Next slide. We also have worked to be the leaders that created Canada's very first net positive multi-tenant office building. That means it generates more energy than it actually needs. It was done entirely within the developer's approved budget, zero government funding. And before you can ask, I'll tell you all the numbers, but the cost to build this building above and beyond what a Class A office space would be was between 5% and 8% more expensive. That's all. So we were able to make a good business case, and that's the work that we do over and over again, is trying to find the place where we can be more resilient environmentally and economically, where we can have social capacity increased in ways that actually build a better future. So this building has, as you can see this data here, that is a very unique piece, is that they allow us to report on their energy generation. Lots and lots of buildings make claims of environmental ability, but they don't actually report it. And we believe that reporting and numbers and measurement matters. Next slide. That's it. I'm happy to answer any questions. My whole purpose here today is to make sure that this community knows that we're here to help. SWR is committed to being able to support people to move in the right way, in a way that makes a better future, not just environmentally, and we're really honored to be able to speak with you today. Thanks.
Thank you, Tova, for your presentation. Questions from members of council on this presentation? Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the delegation, were you involved recently in a project over in Woolwich that just came out, like a microforest or a reforestation project that just kind of got pushed out?
The sides of the highways? The ones right on the sides of the highways? Yes. That was a partner of ours that actually did the final implementation of it, Reforest Woolwich. They are working on those. We would work in more corporate spaces, so they're sort of doing the sides of the highways, and then we would go to the schools. So we have recently planted a microforest in Woolwich, but not those ones specifically. And that's a great example of actually how we find partnerships. So they're taking care of that, so we don't need to do that. They're not taking care of this part, so we'll take care of that.
No, that's perfect. I could have just sworn I saw your name attached to some sort of news article coming out of there. You have a unique name, obviously.
And actually, I was interviewed for it and talked about it and talked about our program and how they work together.
Microphone.
A question and a comment. So your name, your branding, if you're moving outside of the region of Waterloo, is there any sort of, are you contemplating a rebrand or to kind of include, I don't know, people who don't live in Waterloo, if there's going to be local initiatives and partnerships? And then my comment is, I don't know if you dropped the 5 to 8% number specifically just for me or not, but it is nice to see that there are organizations that do take the costs of climate action seriously as well, because it can certainly be a money pit with very little return at times. So I think when the two go hand in hand, it can be a beautiful thing, so.
So I'll talk about the money thing first, because that's always a good one. That building, as I said, the additional cost was between 5% and 8% more than a Class A office building. But the beautiful thing about it, actually even better than that, is that the building generates all of the energy it needs. So the developer who owns the building makes $250,000 a year more on that building than any other building. So it's actually far more profitable than a standard building. And we've worked with businesses, including things like steel fabricators, who have doubled in size, gone to net zero, and saved over $1 million doing it. We actually know that sustainability is actually a really good business decision. My background is from business. I did not come from nonprofit world. So I understand this. This is the work that we do day in and day out. The brand question, we get asked that a lot, and it's interesting because I'm a 30-year resident of Guelph. I'm not from Waterloo Region, and I get a lot of question marks about that one too. Right now, we're working with the acronym SWR and just using SWR with Wellington being a W. We also go to Woodstock, so we've got members in Woodstock in Oxford County, so thinking, can we do much like KFC, EY, TD, WLU? There's an awful lot of examples of let's just use the acronym. And frankly, it's what most people call us anyway. People say, oh yeah, I'm a member of SWR. Great, yes you are.
Great answer. Do you do anything with paramedic halls?
We totally have, actually.
Good. Being that our council member is a paramedic in Waterloo Region, just want to make sure that we were making those sustainable as well. Other questions from members of council? Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming today. I do have a resolution here moved by Councillor Woodham, second by Councillor Ottens, that Township Mapleton Council receive for information the delegation of Sustainable Waterloo Region, Tova Davidson, great last name, regarding Introduction Impact Network Observing Organization and Microforest Program. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We are going to make a change in the programming at this point in time, because we do have some visitors here that need to get a little bit further away, and we'd like to get them moving. So we do have Emily and Reba here, sorry. Sorry? Oh, yeah. So before we get to you two, I just got reminded of something else, so hang tight, coming to you. We have a new staff member here, Carl. And Carl is going to be introduced by our CFO.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson. I'll be quick. Mr. Jeffries joins us with extensive experience in both the public sector and the private sector. As you're aware, recently our 2025 budget included a much-needed increase in service levels with the addition of a full-time IT manager. And while we were pleased to have that included within the budget, we are even more pleased with the outcome of our recruitment process and our ability to bring another knowledgeable, capable, and motivated member to the Mapleton team. So without further ado, I'll let Carl give you a little background about himself. I had the same ones at my previous employer. I'm very excited to be a part of the Mapleton team, and after being here for a few weeks, I can see there's much to do, and I'm just noticing the uniqueness of your microphones that you can only use one at a time. So we'll take a look at that. A little bit of background. For the last 11 and a half years, I've been working at another lower tier municipality. You might have heard of them before, Wilmot Township. Prior to that, I worked for CompuGen as a senior network technician. Some of my clients included Sleeman Breweries, RIM, a number of education boards, eHealth in Toronto, the Elliott Lake Inquiry. I set up the network for that. And prior to that, I worked for Cogeco and Burlington Hydro. And
I guess the biggest client out of that was Trip Central with a nationwide network. So I'm hoping to bring all that experience in both the private and public sector here to Mapleton, and I'm looking forward to helping you grow into the future of technology.
All right, might have some questions. Any questions on council here to put them on the spot? Okay, number one question. That microphone crackles. Can you fix it?
I'm sensing a network connection problem here.
Okay. Thanks, Carl. All right, now we'll move up to skipping over environmental sustainability and moving into 9.2.1 with Municipal Services Corporation business case. Now we're back up. Thank you, everybody.
So, good afternoon, members of the council. Thank you for allowing us to present today. My name is Reba. I'm here with my colleague Emily, and our team at Graham Capital has been working together with the team here at Mapleton to create a business case to initiate the process of establishing an MSC for the township as required under the Ontario regulations. This business case is going to be made public for transparency and feedback as well. And today, what we just wanted to do is kind of go over the key points of the business case. That includes the MSC structure, why it's needed, the benefits it provides, and just the overall governance and finance of the whole operation. All right, so let's get into it. We can skip over to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so we had previously reviewed the MSC structure with you guys at a council meeting in October last year, but I'm just going to do a quick recap of what that is. So an MSC essentially is just a carve-out of the township's water and wastewater services, right? So currently, the township's Public Works Department oversees several services, including water and wastewater, alongside roads, parks, and other municipal responsibility. So what the MSC structure really does is it essentially takes out the water and wastewater services into its own dedicated entity. And what this allows for is for the utility to operate with a little bit more or better financial flexibility while still 100% remaining owned and operated by Mapleton, right? This is just a structural change in just simple terms, like the full ownership, control, service delivery still remains in the township's hands. And so it kind of just brings about the question, well, why even consider an MSC or separate the water and wastewater services? So next slide, please. So the idea originated from Mapleton's need to upgrade the water and wastewater systems to enable future development of the township, right? So there's about $41 million worth of capital projects currently required within the township, and the township has done an excellent job in their due diligence and has looked at a variety of different options to fund these projects and ultimately make a decision that's the best and most cost-effective for the ratepayers, right? So now, whether or not an MSC is established, the township would have to rely on a mix of options as shown on the slides, whether it's grant funding, development charges, or financing, in order to really finance these projects all together. In either scenario, though, unfortunately, the grant funding and development charges alone would not be enough to cover the full cost of these projects. So what that means is a township would have to go out and look for external financing, whether it's debt or equity financing, to cover that funding gap that we would have. But the key point here is, without an MSC, there are some restrictions on the borrowing capacity, because as a municipality, you can only borrow so much against your borrowing limit, and that kind of limits how much Mapleton would be able to get. But creating an MSC as a separate entity helps overcome these borrowing restrictions and really allows that financial flexibility, and it also preserves the existing borrowing capacity for other strategic priorities that Mapleton might have as well. In a nutshell, the MSC structure kind of gives the township that financial flexibility and the power to overcome the borrowing capacity restrictions that we have. So if we go into the next slide, in the previous slide I just mentioned, again, the big purpose of the MSC is the financial flexibility and allowing to bring in and combining the variety of financing solution and overcoming the borrowing capacity restriction. They also have other key advantages as shown here as a Sickle-based board, which allows the municipality to bring in private sector expertise to provide advice on all aspects of the process, be it financing, design, operations, while again still owning 100% control of the municipality and full decision-making authority as well. And lastly, it provides long-term sustainability by using a utilities pay-for-utilities model, where the water and wastewater services revenue fund their costs directly. So this provides, it ensures the ratepayer funds are transparently and efficiently managed to make sure that Mapleton's water and wastewater system is sustainable for the long term. And so in this self-sustaining entity, our goal here is to provide the governance and personnel structure and keep it as simple and as minimally disruptive to the current township operation as we can. And I'm going to hand it over to Emily to talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Reba. Nice to see everybody. Thanks for having us. So yeah, if you want to just go to the next slide, I'll talk about the governance structure. So really, you'll see other townships do this as well, and there's not one set rule book on how this is governed and managed. This is something that you would cater to each township to make sure that it works for you. So what we've worked together to talk about that we think is going to work best for this township is to have a board of directors at the Municipal Services Corporation that oversees everything, does all the key decision making. So this board would include people from the township, so council, staff, it can even include public community members, and then it can include private sector people, like us, if you want to have us. So we would help advise through things. Anyone from the private sector on this board is purely there just as an advisor. So as you can see on this slide, all the public members are the ones that hold all of the voting shares in the MSC. So again, we're here for advice if you need us, but this is entirely in your control. There's not actually any staff at the MSC, it's really just that board of directors, and I'll sort of talk about that next here. So there's going to be other entities that contract to the MSC to do the water wastewater work. So the Ontario Clean Water Agency is already doing operations and maintenance for you, and they're contracted to the township. So quite simply, now that the water wastewater assets are going to move from the township to the MSC, so is that contract. Doesn't really need to change. They're still performing their duties as they always have been. It's just moving down to the MSC level. As far as township staff that have to do with the water wastewater utility, maybe there's people involved in billing, rate collections. I know Jamie does a whole bunch of things with water wastewater. Those people would still do those things. They would still be employed by the township. Basically, their services are just contracted to the MSC. So we would help set up some legal agreements to make sure that works. And the MSC would basically be compensating those people for their services, basically the portion of their salary that goes to water wastewater. So all of these costs are already costs that you have. It's just simply being shifted into a few different buckets here. Okay, next slide. So similar to the governance, we're trying to make this less disruptive for you. We don't want it to be a big, expensive thing. We just want it to be very simple. And same with the flow of funds. We want to keep things basically as they are. Like Reba said, we're just really carving out that water, wastewater revenue stream and the expenditures associated with it. So right now at the township, you have revenues, of course, associated with water and wastewater. So that includes, your rate collection. That includes anything that you have coming in from development charges specifically for water, wastewater, and also any grant funding you have specifically for water, wastewater. Those exact revenues, those are also going to come down to the MSC. No real change. The expenditures are your operations and maintenance, any renewal work, and any big capital projects that you have coming up. Those live at the township. Now they live at the MSC. So really, it's all the same things, just being moved down to the MSC. For the ratepayers, and of course, you're also ratepayers, not just councillors, on your bill, you would see basically the name of the MSC on your bill, not the Township of Mapleton. But again, it's kind of the same thing. It's owned by you. You control it and everything. So that's one of the key changes I see the public may be asking questions about. As far as their actual charges and everything, the township itself still retains control of what the rates are actually set at. So like we said, the MSC has this skills-based board of directors, and they can make recommendations to the township as to what rate should be set at in order to help pay for all the things the MSC needs to pay for. However, it does remain the township's authority to actually set the rates. So again, no real change there. So as far as the public concern, it's really just that letterhead change and hopefully even better management. I know this asset's already being managed very well, but hopefully it retains this good management in the future as far as more capital projects come online and everything. So to finish it off here, we just have one more slide on some next steps. Or not. Oh, I can just talk about it if it's not working. Anyways, I can just talk about it because the graphic doesn't add a whole lot. So today, obviously, we're just talking about this. There'll be a public consultation period that opens, and that'll be open for about a month. So The website's all sorted out to have an email address where feedback can come in, and that'll be addressed. And then after this sort of 30-day period, that's when we'll come back here and talk about if this is something that we're going to go forward with. And if so, that'll take Reba and I and our team about a month or two to help stand everything up here and get the MSC actually established and ready to do the work that it needs to do. And that's all I have for you today.
Thank
Any
you, Emily. Thank you,
questions?
Reba. Questions from members of council on the MSC? Councillor Ottens.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Davidson. A question: I wonder if a municipality adopts this process, does it affect, once you apply for grants, does it affect the, whether you receive them? Would the grant giver say, well, you're doing this now, so you don't need grants from us anymore? Is that something that could possibly be a problem?
Great question. We definitely don't want to prevent grants coming in the future, that's for sure. We see this as any capital projects that come up, they're really going to be viewed the same way, whether they live at the MSC or the township. And the township can apply for grants, and then those can feed down to the MSC, or the MSC can apply for grants. So this still remains very open and flexible, and that's definitely not something we want to be closed off to.
And just to add to that, this is the direction that MSC, of what the province would like to see. And when we did our delegation last week with Minister Surma, she was quite impressed with the process that we're in. And there was no indication whatsoever that we wouldn't be able to get grant funding by going down this road. They were actually encouraging to continue on this process. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson. Through you to Emily and Reba. So once this MSC is set up, and I know we're kind of hyper-focused on water and wastewater, there's that 41 number that is impactful for all of us. But if we think past that or bigger, other municipalities look at streetlights, for example, or you name it. I don't know, fire services haven't really gone here yet, but like you could contemplate other ventures potentially. I know we kind of have this P3 thing happening for water and wastewater, but would it need to be a separate MSC for each service, or could you expand the current one to include other opportunities?
Emily, I'm just going over here to the CAO for that one.
Thank you, through your worship, to Council Martin. So there has been discussion, and there's other things that we'd like to put in within that same umbrella. And we actually discussed what we can name the MSC. Originally it was, Mapleton Utility Corporation, but that limits us to what we can do. So there's been some talk with all the senior management on what we can do. The one umbrella, but there can be different business units under that umbrella. So for instance, streetlights could be one. Electric car charging stations could be another. It's whatever we decide to do within that MSC, and there are opportunities to expand, the mandate of that MSC.
And as you know, Councillor Martin, there's other communities that have hydro, and they've rolled hydro into theirs because they have hydro still. So, other questions?
Through you, Mayor. I'm just wondering for the public consultation, what the process is going to be. Is it all going to be online, or we're going to have online at a community meeting, or what that's going to look like for us?
Thank you, Mayor Davidson, to Councillor Reid. So yeah, as indicated within the staff report that'll come up a little later on, we do have a public meeting scheduled to occur in this venue right here on February the 11th, starting at 5:30 p.m. So Reba and Emily will be here once again as part of that process, giving a similar, possibly updated version of this presentation to the public for their input. In addition to that, as noted in the presentation, we have set up a website which launched literally while we were sitting in this meeting that people can access with a lot of additional information regarding the MSC, some questions that might come up, frequently asked questions, and then also we've established a email address, msc@mapleton.ca, so any inquiries can be put directly to there. It'll come into our staff team that are involved in this project, and anything we have to roll up to to Graham for additional support, will do. The goal ultimately is that any feedback that we receive by February 7th, so initial feedback, we'll try and include within the discussions at the public meeting, but the input and feedback consultation will be open for a full month, so it closes on February the 28th.
Great answer. Great question. Perfect. Anything else? Thank you both for coming. We'll see you again shortly. I do have the resolution here, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Woodham. The Township Mapleton Council received for information report CCC 2025-01. Wrong one. Hang on. We'll get back to that one in a minute. There we go. Township Mapleton Council received for information report FIN 2025-03 regarding Municipal Services Corporation business case and public engagement. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. Now I need to flip back to this other one. Resolution moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Woodham. The Township Mapleton Council received for information report CCC 2025-01, and that council supports the township. Oh, is this after you? Are you presenting this one? Okay, we're going to do this one because I'm going to have former Councillor Martin. Mr. Martin Tamlin's coming up to the... My paper's got a little discombobulated here, so thank you. Need this one, right? Okay, hang on. I just found the other one I need. Moved by Councillor Reed, second by Councillor Martin. Township Mapleton Council received for information the presentation submission by Graham Capital Limited entitled Mapleton's Water and Wastewater Upgrades regarding a business case for the proposed Municipal Services Corporation, and that council directs staff to proceed with the recommended implementation process as per requirement of Ontario Reg 599-06 for business case public consultation utilizing the timeline as presented. All right, any questions, comments on that one? All in favor? Carried. They're both at the same number. Yeah. Gotcha. That's where I got lost. You're on.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This is a big moment in my new role and presenting to Council for the first time. My kind of muscle memory wanted to put my hand up and I was all in favour. My arm was ready to go up.
You notice I looked over sometimes.
I know. Yeah, I had some questions on my own. So yeah, this is obviously a new role, as a shared role between here and Central Wellington. So I wanted to update you on what I'm up to and also present what a sustainability kind of roadmap will look like for the township. Next slide, please. So we'll start with the guiding principles. So a little bit of kind of Climate 101, which kind of drives the decisions that are being made and also the priorities. What climate action planning looks like within our region and in a two-tier governance as well. Actions taken by the township already. We're well on our way, and then what's coming up in the next year or two in my work and driving our sustainability forward. Next one, please. So here is a graph that really describes well what needs to happen and what kind of at play. So here's a graph showing the greenhouse gas emissions and kind of on where we are at 2024, and really the need for the emissions reduction being our main focus. So you can see here that anything that moving on from here, any reductions that we can make now, you can see the exponential savings on how much carbon goes into the atmosphere. And once it's there, it sticks around. So when we talk of climate budgets, we're talking about how much carbon is in the air and also kind of how we pay for all these changes. So really this is to emphasize that our efforts really is in that of mitigation. And when we're thinking about greenhouse gases, we're really thinking about energy. So how we move around the municipal fleet, how we heat and cool buildings. So really focusing on that. The next slide, please. Okay, so climate action planning. The other aspect of, I'm realizing in my work that the decisions that we make run through all the different aspects of municipal operations. So by putting these considerations in everything we do, we can focus on energy conservation, operational efficiencies, in our policy development, the partnerships and programs in education, and ecosystem protection and enhancement. So these are all things that become part of our everyday considerations. Next, please. So this slide here is taken from our greenhouse gas inventory that was done a couple of years ago now. And you can really see out of the community emissions as a whole, municipalities really have a kind of a small footprint within that. So, you know, even between 3 and 8%. But also in the kind of process and the decision making we do, we have a lot more influence on the community emissions as well. So that can be described as our direct influences we have in our fleet and fleet transitions, how we heat and cool and manage our buildings, infrastructure decisions, directions that we give on planning applications as far as land use, bylaws and enforcement, and also climate budget allocation. But then we do have this influence as well, which is like 40 to 60% on the community, on engagement and education and partnerships and collaboration, and some of the great programs and incentives that are already in place in the township. And also at conferences, I know councillors and staff have been busy also advocating for policy changes as well that might support that. So there's some other ways in which we can support this. Next slide, please. So here is, because we're Wellington County and then the lower tiers, it's really important to see what the county has already taken on, and this is called what the county calls the 5 big moves, really, and some of the heavy lifting, that they call it. So when they did the greenhouse inventory, they really included the whole of Wellington County. And so with their plans here, focusing on energy efficiency, the green development standards, transportation, climate-friendly agriculture, and waste reduction and the circular economy. So these are all big projects that the county's taken on, but then we have our own role and can benefit from what they're doing as well. There's lots of knowledge, there's lots of programs in place, and lots of conversations already between myself and the county and how we can align with that. And with the townships, we're the governance that's closest to the community as well. So we're in a better position to implement some of these strategies and emission savings reductions. Next slide, please. Mapleton Township has been very active already. So in 2023, we released our greenhouse gas inventory. So this really gave us a base of where we were at as far as a township, and this allows us to set our goals and prioritize all the things that we need to look at. Next slide, please. And with that came our target setting, and these. Looking at other targets that have been set for energy reduction from other municipalities, these reductions seem to be more in line with what other people are thinking. But as part of the climate action planning, when we can really take a deeper delve into our energy use and our transportation and how we operate, then those targets can, in my mind, will hope to be a little bit more ambitious, but kind of true to and realistic to what we can achieve. Next slide, please. So through FCM, we participated in the Partners for Climate Protection. And this really is a free membership that helps kind of us to be accountable and track where we are. And so we've done our emissions inventory. We've set some targets already, and then during this next year, I've already framed a terms of reference, which I'll be coming to council with shortly, are focusing on our corporate climate action plans, really getting our own house in order and how we track everything and what we're going to do. And then during that same time, running concurrently, is working with local stakeholders and really the local community taking ownership on the community climate action. Next slide, please. So as part of legislative reporting, every year we need to report on our facilities, on our energy use, the types of fuel we use, and also our greenhouse emissions. And then we can, and every 5 years then, report over that period and see where the trends are, and actually use this document as a working document to kind of identify where our savings or conservation measures can be made. On this, the graph there about the combined utility costs is also that any of these environmental and sustainable considerations and changes or retrofits or making buildings more airtight, etc., is not only reducing our footprint, we're also looking at the bottom line of the money we're saving as well, especially high energy consuming buildings like arenas and swimming pools and all those different things. So those will be the focus area. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the higher energy intensive facilities that have been identified are obviously the arena, the Morford Community Centre and Mapleton Health, Public Works Operation, and Drayton Roads and Garage. So as part of this process, we're integrating all our building condition assessments, our kind of replacement schedules, and working with Jamie and Aran, and basically creating an energy team in which we look at our priorities and opportunities based on some of the things that we're already going to be doing anyway. So some aspects are what's called prescribed aspects, where we're changing lighting or windows are being replacements as well. But there's also some really, some larger projects, say the ice pad replacement at the arena, which will need more engineering and other considerations. Next slide, please. And so with that became recommendations. Heather presented in the summer to see what those findings were. And following on recommendations that was already made was actually to come in and do higher level energy audits for the buildings as well, which haven't been done. But also within these higher level audits, they also give us a roadmap of what can be done at different levels. Small things that can be changed, or taking a whole project to net zero, which might include renewable energy in those considerations as well. Looking at our water efficiencies, working with the Ontario Clean Water Agency on those projects as well. And then making this climate lens, with all the decisions that we made, having these considerations about energy efficiency and sustainability. Next slide, please. So, so this is how we might get there. So the FCM funding is called the GHG Reduction Pathway Studies, which offers up to $200,000 and 80% coverage. This actually funds the studies that need to be taken. It funds how staff work together to integrate all this decision-making and reconciling the work that's been done into our projects, covering energy tracking software, and also staffing as well, so towards my own wage. So everything that we want to do, we can apply for this, and I'm looking for support from Council today to move forward with that process. We had a great presentation from Tova today as well. And so the Impact Network, which focuses on corporations and municipalities as well, offers the Impact Tool, which is a fantastic data tracking and reporting tool. And for us to have that, it covers all aspects of our transportation, waste, and in fact, anything that's really important to us. If I was to do that, the County of Wellington uses Energy Cap, I think it's called. And so they have a minimum per utility bill, and that's already, I think it was like $4,500 a year just for the software itself. And because of the size of the municipality, membership to the Impact Network, which would provide that software, that support, that peer-to-peer support, and working with other municipalities in the region, would be a $3,000 a year commitment. And so that's even cheaper than just having the software, which we do need to continue. Developing the corporate climate action plan, identifying budgetary needs and also kind of funding opportunities, the GHG pathway studies, and all of these are also prerequisites for any capital funding that we might want to apply for as well. So any of the bigger projects with the arena, for instance, this will be a requirement of that moving forward. Establish a framework and meet with local stakeholders and developing the community action plan and working closely with the County of Wellington. Establish a natural asset inventory, which is kind of the next stage from an asset management point of view and relates to adaptation and climate resilience. And then to bring a climate portal or web pages to the township's website. And so it's like a dashboard of what we're doing, how people can get involved, and all the kind of great programs and incentives that are already available. Okay, next, I think that might be it.
Well, thank you, Martin, for your very first presentation to council as a staff member.
I don't know why I'm so nervous. I know you all. But
Yes. It's because now you have to look at us before you run peripheral. Now you got to actually look at us. Maybe that's it. Questions from council to staff member Tamlin. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Martin. Let's start there. So clearly the CAO didn't loop you in that you don't ask for money on your first report ever, but apparently that got lost in the gaps. Yeah. But to that, you started to talk a little bit about the Impact Tool software and what that can do. In your notes, you say that it helps provide real-time insights, reporting graphs. I don't know what Scope 3 emission is, seamless data transfer, and automatic data ingestion. Can you speak to that software licensing and what that software would actually do for you? You started to get there a little bit, but I'm just curious, like, would that be your main software package that you use for day-to-day stuff, or?
Thank you. And through you there to Councillor Martin. So when we have our baseline and we're tracking everything that's going on, it's just a place where everything is held and easily reported as well. The automatic ingestion, they call that, is also, you can set up so that basically utility billing will go straight into this software. It kind of makes it seamless as well. And the nice thing about this as well, the support, you're supported in actually adopting this software as well and kind of led through that, and that also integrates with other departments in the township of how the format in which data is captured, whether it's through fuel use, mileage, electricity, gas billing as well. But then it has the flexibility to look at staff travel and all other aspects as well. So you can bring all those different aspects into it as we develop our climate reporting and tracking.
Go ahead.
So it would be like an add-on, or it would be like the software would be used kind of across multiple departments?
Yeah, it would bring data in from all those departments into one place. Yeah.
Other questions or comments? No?
I have a follow-up.
Go ahead. Floor is yours.
Through you to CFO Kelly. So with this financial request, can you help me, like, where would we process this? What budget would this come out of? I'm assuming we don't have a climate, Martin doesn't have a budget yet locally, or does he?
Through you, Mayor Davidson, to Councillor Martin, no, there isn't an existing budget allocation for a membership such as this. The 2025 budget includes strictly the staffing costs associated with Martin's position. Having said that, the line it would end up falling under long-term is a membership's budget line. So it would be considered a non-budgeted expense for this year, which gets incorporated within our closing of all of 2025 with costs that are over and under budget, but this would be considered a non-budgeted expense if approved.
Thank you. Anything further? Thanks, Martin. So I do have the resolution here, moved by Councillor Otten, second by Councillor Woodham, that Township Mapleton Council received for information, report CCC 2025-01, and that council supports the township joining Sustainable Waterloo Regions Impact Network, SWR, and further that council directs staff to apply to the Green Municipal Funds Community Building Retrofit Program, Greenhouse Gas Reduction Pathway Studies. Questions on this resolution or comments on the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now, flipping back to our regular scheduled programming, going to 9.2.2, interim tax levy bylaw. Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson. So this is a regulatory requirement to pass a bylaw that allows staff to move forward with processing interim tax levy bills. So with your approval, staff will work towards generating interim bills over the next few weeks, with the first installment being due on March the 27th. All the remaining installment dates are noted within the bylaw itself. Just note that alongside the interim bills, we will be including a brochure providing further context on the 2025 budget and other key information regarding township services. We are taking a pretty in-depth look at the existing brochure and beefing it up a little bit, similar to the content of the budget report that you saw this year. So with your approval, staff can move forward with issuing the bills and producing those brochures and getting them out on the street. So any questions, please give them.
Thank you. The resolution moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reid, that Township Mapleton Council receive for information Finance Report FIN 2025-04 regarding the 2025 interim property tax levy, and that council consider for approval of draft bylaw being an interim tax levy bylaw. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to MPAC, Assessment Review. Patrick?
Thank you once again, Mayor Davidson. So this report's provided for information purposes for council. Generally, you would see this included under correspondence. However, staff, when we saw this report produced, deemed it to be appropriate to draw additional attention, given the fact that this report highlights the Township of Mapleton specifically. As noted in the report, Mapleton experienced the fourth largest assessment within the province in regards to new farm assessment within the farm tax class. Mapleton's new farm assessment in 2024 totaled $53 million of the province's total $1.42 billion in new farm assessment. This highlights, and a consistent message here, sounding like a broken record, but the impact of the farm tax program, the farm tax rebate, whereby farm assessments are taxed at 25% of the residential tax rate. So some people could look at this report at first blush, which a lot of people do, and say, wow, Mapleton experienced a significant amount of assessment this year. Great news. The majority of that assessment is in farm tax classes. As such, the benefits of that new assessment aren't as large as if they were in the industrial, commercial, or residential piece. So highlighting it for council's attention and continue to support council's advocacy regarding the fairness of the farm tax rebate program and the current fiscal relationship with the province.
Thank you, Patrick. Resolution moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Martin. The Township Council receive for information FIN 2025-05 regarding the 2024 Municipal Property Assessment Corporation Assessment Review. Questions, comments? Yay, we're number 4 in the province. That's great, but this is why we always are talking to the province about the farm tax rebate and how it negatively affects us. And Patrick, I assume that with this new assessment, that our $8 million lost every year is going to go up. No, don't respond. Something more for us to talk about with the province and the government when it comes back to let us have talks with them. Certainly something that the finance minister will come and say to me again, Greg, that haven't we already talked about this 3 or 4 times? I say, yes, but we're still affected. But we'll work on it. We'll keep going. Any other thoughts, questions? All in favor? Carried. Have the approval of bylaws, item 10.3, 10.1. Moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Reid, that bylaws number 2025-004, 2025-005, and 2025-006 be hereby ready first, second, and third time, and finally passed the 28th day of January 2025. Any questions on any of these 3 bylaws to pass? Seeing no hands, all in favor? That's carried. No correspondence for council's direction. We have a number there for council's information. There's 6 of them. Any comments from council on any of those 6? Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Letter number 6 from Liz Samus, took the time to write in, so just to highlight and say thank you to her for writing in. Most of her comments I would agree with. I know she had some questions. I'm assuming we respond back to that at some point, or will.
Yeah, I've corresponded with Liz, so go ahead, Councilor Woodham.
Thank you, Mayor Davidson, through you. Actually, it's letter number 6, too. I was just wondering, perhaps I can have a question to our planner, Michelle Brown, knowing when will this be coming back to us again to engage in a public meeting? It looks like it will be a good thing to have.
I'm sorry, what was the actual question?
The question is public meeting. Liz's comments will be included in.
Oh, no date has been set for that meeting. We had other meetings that were taking place, and then the next public meeting for me was the short-term rental accommodation. I am now down 2 staff members, so for the 3rd time, I'm going to need to reschedule it, and if all else fails, it'll be doing it by myself before the end of February. And then after that, we can concentrate on the CPP going out.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Ottens?
Thank you, through you, Mayor Davidson. Number 5, the Maitland Valley Conservation Annual Meeting. I was thinking of attending that, seeing as the sliver in Mapleton is on our property anyways, so.
You're more than welcome to go.
2 birds, 1 stone.
You're more than welcome to go.
Weather
They-
permitting.
They represent a very small amount of conservation land that we
Yep.
have, like 0.5% or
Yep.
something like that, so. But
That's right,
any member of council can go to that meeting.
because they typically haven't put these official in.
Anything further? Councillor Reid?
I was just wondering, through you, Mayor, if you wanted to discuss 12.1, the announcement from infrastructure by Matthew Ray.
Well, we got money. That's great, $914,000, and that's something that was actually mentioned at our delegation last week by Infrastructure Minister King Gaserma. how Mapleton got that funding, and that's great funding that we received. I know that Minto and the county had a joint application. They received about $6 million, I think it is. But us receiving this amount of money for Side Road 15 is greatly appreciated from the province and will help us to do Side Road 15 without all the expenditures of coming off at our tax line, which is great. And that's why, one of the reasons why we do these delegations and keep having these conversations with the province. Thank you. Anything further? Okay, we'll move on then. Any notice of motion? Move on to number 15, other business. And I'm going to talk a little bit on the other business, and we're talking about the funding and just a minute ago, or a second ago. We hear comments from the public, and we see comments from the public that are posted that talk about, how we're wasting money by going to these conferences and how we get this funding and we don't do anything with it. And that is so false. And we work very hard for our community, whether it be staff or council. We go to these delegations. Mr. Barron and I have been, I don't know how many delegations now, talking to the provincial, and I've had conversations, we've had conversations with federal politicians and federal ministers. But the provincial one is what we're closest to. And we've had these delegations, we've talked to them over and over and over again, to the point they now look to us and consider us a friend to the province, and look forward to our delegations. Because we don't come looking just for money, we come with some solutions and some ideas that might be helpful for other communities of our size or even larger. But just to give an idea, and we had Mr. Kelly, and I think Rachel probably pulled out the numbers for us, but I believe these numbers are from the last number of years. If we take out the OMPF funding and we take out the OCIF funding, we've got an additional $7,070,000 in the last 6 years. $7 million more to Mapleton that we never would have had before if we didn't do these delegations. So yes, it might cost us $5,000, $10,000 to go to these things, but I think that's pretty good money. If you go $5,000, $10,000 to get $7 million. That's pretty good. If I could get a stock, I think as Mr. Barron said to me yesterday, if I could find a stock and I could put $5,000 in and get back, $914,000 back, I'd buy it right now. And when you look at the OCIF funding, back in 2018, our OCIF funding was $267,874. Back in 2018, $267,874. In 2025, the money we just got, $1,311,000, over $1 million more in OCIF funding, which is the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. That's $1 million more from the province to fund our infrastructure plans. And when you look at the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, it was $835,500, and we're now over $1 million. Again, these delegations work. That's why we do them. We go there, we have conversations. This is what we've done for the last number of years, and it's working for us. Yes, there are things we don't get when we ask for funding, like this last rounds of the Hughes funding. We didn't get the wastewater funding. There's another round coming up, but we're confident, and having discussions with MPP Ray, confident that eventually we will get the funding. And, we've also applied with federal or provincial government funding right now. We have $17.6 million in applications right now. $17.6 million more in applications out there. And I just thank our team for diligently looking for these funding programs and getting our name out there and asking the province and the federal government for these funds, because it's very important for a municipality our size to be funded properly by the province and funded properly by the federal government. And we know that the impact of the farm tax rebate regularly affects us. No, we haven't got our $8 million extra a year yet, but you know what? We almost got $8 million over the last 6, So that's not bad. Anything to add to that, Mr. Barron?
Through your worship, and also the delegations, we sat through with Mr. Lecce, I think on 2 or 3 separate occasions, in partnership, of course, with the school board. And although it wasn't our application, we were extremely supportive, and that's, of course, was an announcement that's not included on that list of close to $17 million investment into our municipality.
Thank you, Mr. Barron, for bringing that up. That's $17.3 million from the province, plus the school board puts in money. That investment's over $20 million in Mapleton. So that was also a lot of work done by this township, by the county, by the school board to get that investment into our community. So add that to the list we just talked about. We're doing quite well with our delegations, and our investment of going to these is paid off way more than we expected, and we'll continue doing them because it works for us. Any other comments from council? Okay. So that is other business. We don't have a closed session, Mr. Clerk.
We do not.
So we'll go into confirmatory bylaw. Resolution 17.1, moved by Councillor Reid, second by Councillor Martin, that bylaw number 2025-007, being a bylaw to confirm all actions and proceedings of the council of the corporation of the township of Mapleton, be hereby read the first, second, and third time, signed by the mayor and clerk, and sealed with a corporate seal. All in favor? That's carried. We're adjourned at 5:00.